So, good evening, everyone. Great to have you guys with us. This week, we are delving into, I suppose, something that's nutrition focused, but I also think is very mindset focused as well. I really do think it's a bit of both. And this is something that, regardless of your age, your gender, your background, your lifestyle, this is something that always affects us, no matter who we are. So, what we're talking about now is cravings, how to deal with them and still make progress. This is something that comes up all the time when I'm talking to you guys, understandably, because it is something that when you're not sure how to, feels quite hard to overcome. So I am going to keep this as simple and as easy to follow as I can. That's my aim for this call. I have split this call really into three main sections, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. But I've split this up into three main sections, and I'm going to talk about three specific types of cravings, the biggest three that I think impact all of us. And I want to give you a step-by-step protocol or a strategy on how to tackle these. I think sometimes half the battle is needing to have a system in place and needs to have an SOP. SOP is like standard of practice. So it's just something that if we think of it without emotion for a second, a standard practice is just when something happens or a problem comes up, how do we solve it step by step and what's the protocol that we use step by step to overcome it? And I think sometimes it is really helpful to think of it like that. Almost kind of like a doctor and a patient as well. Like you're coming in with a symptom, the doctor gives you something to treat it. This is what I'm hoping this is kind of going to be like. And you guys will hopefully get a lot of value from this. So let's dive right in. First of all, where do cravings come from? Cravings don't come out of nowhere. And what I want to make really clear at the start of this is that cravings aren't just a lack of willpower. It's not that you're doing something wrong. It's not that there's something wrong with you. Really, what it is actually, they're very normal. Everyone has them. Everyone gets them. Particularly, any women listening to this call, you're going to have them no matter what every single month because you're going to have your period. And that's just something that we have to deal with. But what they are, they're information and they're telling us something about something that's happening within us. So they don't come out of nowhere, but they mainly come from these places. So hunger, undereating, habit and routine, stress or emotions, boredom, lack of stimulation, and like I just said, hormones. Mainly, when I talk about hormones, I'm talking about menstrual cycle changes and also sleep, which we're going to touch on a little bit today. So I have broken this up into kind of three main types that I'm going to go through with you guys today, because not all cravings are the same. We're breaking them up into general cravings. So these are cravings that come from hunger, habit, routine. Emotional eating. This is a something that I still consider to be a craving of sorts, but it's slightly different. That's more stress, boredom, comfort, and emotion, hence the name emotional eating. And the third one that I want to go through is period related cravings, hormonal changes. Each one, I think, needs a slightly different approach, and that's what we're going to talk about. And I know that there are all genders on this call, but what I do think is that if you're a guy, I think it's helpful for you to hear about the period-related cravings too, because I'm sure that all of you have a woman in your life that will deal with this at one point or another. So I think it will be cool for you guys just to maybe learn a bit more about it as well, and see, if there's something that you can do to help the ladies in your life if they're also going through a process where they're really transforming their body. It will be good for you guys to maybe get a bit more of understanding about that. So I'm hoping that even though that might slightly be a bit more female targeted, that part of the call, you guys will take a lot from it. So before we dive into the three specific types, let's talk about why ignoring your cravings or just cutting foods does not work. And I can tell you that very confidently after been doing this for many, 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 many years, not only working with lots and lots of different people. I work with just women mainly now, but I've coached a lot of guys before. When I was an in-person PT, I had people from all different backgrounds, all genders. Um, and also within myself, I've learned this from myself and from my own journey as well. I used to find emotional eating and cravings particularly very difficult. I feel like I used to suffer with all three of them really, because every month my period would roll around and I'd find that very difficult as well. So this has been a lot of stuff that I've observed within myself and from coaching others as well. This is why ignoring them or cutting your food, cutting things out, will never work for you. Completely banning foods doesn't solve the issue. All it does is it makes you want them 10 times more. And I'm sure that you guys know that. It's like that thing of if someone says to you, "Oh, don't think about a Red Bull." All you're going to think about is a Red Bull as soon as someone says that. It's exactly the same. If you say to yourself, "You can't have sugar. you can't have crisps, you can't have chocolate, whatever it is, you are going to think about it non-stop, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and it's going to run and run and run around in your head. The more you tell yourself you can't have something, the stronger the craving becomes. It is just how we are wired. Therefore, when we put that restriction on ourselves, the restriction increases obsession. It makes us very likely to binge, and from that binge creates quite overwhelming feelings of guilt. And I can tell you that I have been down that road many times before in my life, prior to being a coach and prior to really looking after myself. Um, your brain reacts to restriction with, "Oh, I'm probably not going to ever have this again, so therefore I want it now, and I want it now more than ever." This is why ignoring cravings just massively backfires. And this is why, if you guys have ever tried things before where maybe you have tried quite restrictive diets, let's say, even if it's something to do with like alcohol, you're like, oh, I love a drink, but I need to get healthy. So I'm just going to totally cut alcohol and I'm going to go cold turkey from the get-go. Or whether that, whether that's anything food related as well. Just cutting it now leads you to binging and overeating later, much, much further down the line, or even like only a few days after. Um, that's why if you guys, anyone here that feels like they've tried some really restrictive diets before, like cutting specific food groups or doing any kind of diet that feels like there's a huge element of restriction or cutting specific things, that's why they never work. And that's why even if you get results from them from the start, you can't maintain them forever because we're ignoring this and we're ignoring these very normal urges and compulsions that we have within our diet. So the goal here isn't avoidance. It's actually the opposite. It's just about embracing it, accepting that those thoughts, those feelings, those emotions, those hunger cues are there, and learning how to self-regulate and learning how to manage them better. And that's what this call is all about. So, section one, we're going to go through general cravings, which is mainly down to hunger and habit. So, this is usually driven by, and the things that we would need to take a look at first of all is rather than necessarily the actual craving itself, is we want to make sure that we're getting as many things in alignment as we can. So usually if someone's having quite intense cravings like this gives us information, and this could be one of the following that's happening. You're not eating enough earlier in the day, having really small lunches, really small breakfasts. By the time you come home from work, you've showered the kids, you've put them, you've bathed the kids, you put them to bed, whatever it might be. You sit down to eat, and then all of a sudden you are absolutely ravenous. That often comes from not eating enough earlier in the day and being too restrictive with your calories. So when you get home, you're not going to stay in any calorie deficit. You're absolutely starving. Low protein and low fiber meals as well. We talked a lot about macros in our call last week. And one thing that I did touch on was, as well as wanting to make sure that our food has got lots of protein in, we actually really want to make a conscious effort to have meals that have a lot of fiber in as well. Fiber typically comes from off starchy veg, things like lentils, pulses, legumes. Fruit, to an element, does have fiber in, but a lot of fruit is primarily made up of like simple carbs, and it's also made up of a lot of water. So things like berries, cucumber, celery, those sorts of things. I know celery is not a fruit, but those sorts of things that are a lot of water based, they do have an element of fiber. They're actually not as high fiber as you think. You'd be better off going for like more starchy veg, things with like less water content, and things like lentils and pulses and legumes. They're all super high fiber. So normally that's an indication that we're not getting enough protein or enough fiber. Both are really important. Habits as well, just like habitual times, evenings after dinner. I don't know about you guys, but I always get an inkling for like a sweet treat after I've had my dinner. I always am. I've got a huge sweet tooth. Chocolate is like one of the loves of my life. I've always loved it. I've been such a fiend for it. Every time I have my dinner, I always get a bit of an inkling and I get a bit of an urge to have something sweet. So it's also largely down to that. Also just environmental cues as well. Like particularly when we're dieting, you notice a lot more that like if you're sitting down to watch TV in the evening, you're like, I'm on a diet, like I need to stay in my calories. There are so many food adverts. There are so many food adverts, whether it's like supermarkets or like Deliveroo or Uber Eats or something like restaurants, there are so many. So it's also just those environmental cues as well. Like you're trying to stay in your calories, you're trying to be good, but you're getting subliminal messaging and getting advertising pushed at you all the time. But I think out of the three, these are actually probably the easiest cravings to manage because it's not so much to do with like hormonal changes. It's also less likely to have emotions or a relationship to food attached, less likely. So I think this is like one of the most easy one to manage. So I want to give you a protocol for this. I'm calling this the pause and check method. I've talked to a lot of you guys about this, but not all of you. So let's go through this. So I want you to imagine the scenario. You are, let's say, you've done your whole day, you've had your dinner, At the moment, you're on track, you're in your calories, you're nailing it, you're doing really well. You're sat down with your partner to watch TV. You get that advert for Uber Eats come up, all of a sudden you're like, oh God, I've got a real craving for whatever that was advertising on Deliveroo or whatever it might be. Here is what I want you to do, the pause and check method. First of all, I want you to just pause for 5 minutes. So you get the urge to eat, and I want you to just stop and not do anything for 5 minutes. I want you to give the urge time to settle instead of just reacting instantly and reacting on impulsion. That comes with a bit of practice. This is when you want to start doing. Once you've done that, so 5 minutes has gone, it might feel like quite a long 5 minutes when you first start doing this. The next thing I want you to ask yourself and to get really curious about is ask yourself, am I physically hungry? Or is this just habit? Is this just routine? Or is this actually because I've just seen an advert for Deliveroo where it's tempting me and like basically advertising food at me? What I then want you to do after that is once you've answered that question, review your meals earlier in the day. Think, how big were my portions? Did I have protein? Did I have a lot of fiber at my meals? Did I also balance that meal out with, some carbs and some fats? If there's a hole there, if you think, oh, actually, I skipped breakfast this morning because I was too busy, or oh God, I just grabbed a meal deal on the go from Tesco's because I didn't have much time, but as a result, there wasn't much protein in there. That's when you want to reflect on that. The next step is to just choose intentionally. After 5 minutes and after asking yourself that question, if you are hungry, then eat something, have something to eat. But if you're not, I want you to either do something else, or if you are really, really struggling to get the idea of having food out of your head, just go for a smart swap. So rather than reaching for something really calorie dense, like a whole sherry bag of crisps or like a whole bar of dairy milk, whatever it might be, I want you to have some things in your house and in your cupboards that are much lower in calorie that still give you that kind of satisfaction. So a swap for that might be like, instead of having a whole bar of dairy milk, you might have a hot chocolate powder where you can make that with like some semi-skimmed milk, and that's a lot less calories. Or you could have something like those jelly pots that are like 10 calories per pot of jelly. Or if it's something savory, like something in replacement of that, rather than like a sharing bag of crisps, maybe you've got like an individual pack of like pop chips or something that aren't fried. Something like that. And I want you to have those kind of like in reserve in your house, essentially. So you decide between the two. And what is really important here is that you are not ignoring hunger cues. You're not deliberately not eating if you are genuinely, genuinely hungry, but it's about figuring out and determining whether it is hunger or if it's just habit or routine or something kicking into effect there. After that, change the environment for a bit. Even if you're sat watching your favorite TV show, I want you to get out the room, either like go outside for a short walk, brush your teeth, go read a bit of a book or something. Just do something else that's outside of the room. Most of your cravings pass once the habit loop is interrupted. So the habit loop at the moment is you have the craving, you act on impulse, you eat and eat and eat, you become a bit mindless about what you're eating. You know for a fact you've gone over your calories and there's not much self-regulation there. This is about breaking the habit loop and following this protocol and then ending that by changing your environment and leaving the room momentarily for a few minutes. It's about breaking that habit loop. A pattern interrupt is what causes change. So that's the first one, and that is general craving. So that's your step-by-step technique, and that's called the pause and check method. Section 2. This one is, I would say, a little bit more complex because this is more talking about emotional eating. And I know for a fact that so many of us struggle with this, myself included. I have very much always been a person that's like used food to cope with stress and to cope with boredom. Particularly, I will say today. Today was quite a stressful day for me. I said at the start of this call, the guys on the recording won't hear this, but our wedding photographer just cancelled out of the blue. So we've had to kind of like juggle plates and kind of deal with that along with everything else. And I definitely felt myself go, oh God, like I would love to just hide under my bed and have all my problems go and just like eat a whole massive bag of crisps or something. Like I definitely feel those things come in. So I'm only saying that to tell you guys it's very normal. I think we all, because food is such a joyous thing and such a social thing, the downside of that is that food can very much become a comfort blanket for us when we're feeling emotional or bored or stressed or a certain type of way. So we're going to go through this now, and I'm going to give you a bit of a protocol to go through this as well. So again, emotional eating isn't always and is rarely about genuine hunger. What it is about instead is stress relief, comfort, distraction, and switching off. The reason why we reach for food is because, like I said, food is normally associated as a reward for us. It's a social thing. It's like, it's what we need to survive. It's kind of what our whole life revolves around in essence. And that's where it stems from. So, because we have access to food, like now the way that we live, modern living, we can either order food at the click of a button, or we have a kitchen kitted out with stuff and like full cupboards full of food whenever we want, because we're all really fortunate in that way. Because we have such an instant access to it, food is basically an instant dopamine hit for us, which is very common for a lot of us, which is why your brain goes there. It's easy to access, it's easier to access more now than it ever has been in like the history of mankind. So it's that instant dopamine hit and instantly soothes us. But the reason why this is an issue is because obviously, if you're trying to really prioritize your health and lose weight, that really gets in the way. So it's about addressing that and really working on our relationship with food. And that's kind of like the critical part of this. Now, what I will say before I go into giving you the protocol for this takes time, particularly with emotional eating. I think this really takes time to unpick, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. So when you guys start to try this, if it doesn't happen and if it doesn't work on the first try, do not throw the towel on me and do not give up. You need to keep trying it. It's exactly the same as I always say, you wouldn't expect to go into the gym on day one and know where all the equipment is, know how to use everything, and just whack out like 20 pull-ups and squat 100 kilos. Like, you just wouldn't expect that, right? So we need to give ourselves the same learning capacity when it comes to dealing with like mindset and nutrition. It takes reps and it takes practice. So let's go into this. I've called this the name and redirect approach to give it a nice different name for you. So it's not overly dissimilar from what we've talked about with the first one, but it is slightly different. So something happens. The scenario is a bit different this time. It's not just you're sitting on TV and the lovely Deliveroo advert has come up and all of a sudden you're thinking about food and you've got a craving. What this is instead is something not ideal has probably happened in your day. Something stressful has happened, like me, for example, my photographer basically being like, "Soz babes, I've cancelled." Or it could be anything else to do with work, family, friends, whatever it might be. Something has happened which has made you feel a type of way. There's emotions coming up, or there's stress coming up, or alternatively, you could just be bored as hell, like bored as hell, having a really boring day at work or something. This is when you want to really use this. So, step by step, I want you to stop and name the emotion that you're feeling. You feel the urge come up. I want you to try and name it. Is it stress? Is it boredom? Is it anger? Is it overwhelm? Is it sadness? Is it fatigue? Whatever it is. Because naming it and giving it a name and acknowledging it's there automatically reduces the intensity of the emotion. Now, this is similar to the other technique, but I want you to stop once you've named the emotion and create a pause. I want you to take 5 slow breaths. So inhale, exhale, 5 slow breaths. And I want you to wait for 10 minutes and just leave the room that you're in instantly. I don't care where you are. Leave the room that you're in and go somewhere different. Again, it's breaking the habit loop. It's changing the environment and getting you to go somewhere else. First of all, I want you to try and redirect what you're feeling. So again, ask yourself the question, okay, I've waited for 10 minutes. I've noticed there's an emotion there. In this moment, am I genuinely hungry? Or am I just feeling XYZ and I'm looking for something to soothe me and I'm looking for something to give me an instant dopamine hit? Try and redirect it first. So I want you to try a non-food outlet. That can be anything. You can go on a walk, you can take a shower, you can take a bath, you can listen to music, you can journal, you can call a friend, you can even just step outside and just stand outside your front door and get some fresh air, whatever it might be. Decide that without the guilt then. What I then want you to do, if you still want the food, eat it mindfully. And again, make sure you've got those like better, lower calorie choice foods in reserve in your house. So it doesn't have to be, I'm sharing for the big bag of crisps. I'm actually going for something that's like more individually packaged, which is a little bit less calorie dense. And is going to be more beneficial to me with the goal that I'm in. And also here, what is really important to note is that I'm not demonizing those foods. Like I said, I love food. I love food more than anything. I love crisps. I love chocolate. It's just that for you guys, with the zone that you're in and the goals that you want to achieve, it's not about labeling those foods as bad or you should stay away from them. It's just in these moments, there's things that we can do and there's choices that we can make that are more aligned with your goals and are going to keep you making progress. So if you still want the food, go and have something to eat it slowly, eat it mindfully. and just move on immediately. I do not want you to punish yourself. I do not want you to think I've completely ruined all my progress. My life is over. It's not that case at all. But if you've identified with yourself that actually I'm not hungry, I'm just really emotional, then you know that you don't need to eat something. Food isn't the answer. It's just you're looking for self-regulation and you're looking for something to make you feel better. Emotional eating only becomes a problem when guilt keeps the cycle going. Guilt and shame is what just keeps the cycle going and keeps that cycle going of like binge restrict from emotion. So I want you guys to remember that. That is section number two. Now, section number three, hormonal cravings. Like I said, for the guys in the room, I do think this will be helpful for you guys to know as well. But this is more specifically talking about period cravings. And I feel like I've accidentally put this on such a good week because I've chatted to so many of you ladies this week, and loads of you said that you've just started your period and you feel like you're having quite intense cravings. So by accident, I have created this at a perfect time. So let's dive in. Period cravings are different. They are real, just like the others, but these are more biological. So they are driven by hormonal changes, i.e., as a lady, every time you get your period every month, lower serotonin, increased energy needs. And that is particularly common, obviously, when we are building up to, when you're at the end of your luteal phase, you're about to get your period. And when you're at the start of your follicular phase, when you're just having your period, you do have increased energy needs by that point, basically because your body is burning more energy. Your body is burning more calories with everything that it's doing at that time in your menstrual cycle. The most common cravings, I think, and that seems to be like observed as well when it comes to having a period, chocolate, carbs, and salty foods. Salty foods. Um, what I want to make this clear is again, this isn't a lack of discipline. This is just biological. This is just what is happening within your body every single month as a lady. So the protocol here is more about managing your period cravings and being aware of when it's like a craving from habit, a craving from emotion, or actually if it's just because you know what, I'm about to get my period and that's why it's there. It's about knowing what it is, first of all. So let's predict it as much as we can. So if you guys don't already, I would really recommend tracking your cycle. I personally use an app called Flow. I think I pay for like a yearly subscription. It's not very much. I think I paid like 30 quid for the year or something. It was really, really not expensive. But there are tons of other period apps that I'm pretty sure are free. This is just the one that I've always gone with for some reason. Track your cycle because then you know exactly where you are and you know when cravings tend to hit. And not only that, but also like if you're just feeling a bit emotional, if you're feeling sad, stressed out, you're not sure why, you can look at your period track and go, oh, actually, I'm about to get my period. So that's probably why I feel quite emotional today. But it's about identifying that and knowing why it's there. The second thing is try and preempt it as much as you can. If you are someone that particularly really struggles with cravings when you get to this point in your menstrual cycle, what I want you to do is increase your carbs, so complex carbs as much as you can, just because they have less sugar compared to single carbs. So by single carbs, I mean things like white pasta, white bread, white rice, those sorts of things. They're not inherently bad foods, but they just have more sugar in them. So they don't fill you up for as long and they have less fiber. So it's good to think about going for complex carbs. So brown pasta, brown bread, brown rice, starchy stuff like potatoes as much as you can. Increase that and increase your protein just slightly as much as you can before cravings start. When your cravings do hit, I know that it can be quite intense, but again, in your cupboards, in your fridges, have a bit of a toolkit, have things that are satisfying but nutrient dense options. So, what I mean by that is, again, rather than having a whole share a pack of dairy milk staring at you in the face, if chocolate is really what you're craving, perhaps instead you could meet in the middle and say, I'm going to have the chocolate because having the thing is the thing that I really want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a smaller amount of it. I'm going to crumble it up and I'm going to put it with some Greek yogurt, maybe a little bit of peanut butter or whatever, almond butter, whatever you like. And I'm also going to pair some fruit with it. So it's about having the thing that you're really craving, but pairing it with other stuff that is higher in complex carbs, with some good healthy fats in there and some protein, so that you feel satisfied after that meal, rather than reaching for like just the dairy milk, for example, which is delicious, don't get me wrong, but it's incredibly calorie dense and doesn't have much nutrients in it. So you can eat endless amounts of it and it kind of feels like empty calories because it's not really fueling your body and like making you feel good. It's not giving you any nutrients that your body really wants. So it's about having the thing, but pairing it with something that is really nutrient dense so that you can get the best of both worlds. You can have the thing that you're craving, but not feel like you're going massively over on your calories as well. Also, hydrate. Sometimes thirst feels like cravings. I don't like it when someone says, "Oh, I'm so starving, hungry, and I'm having really intense cravings." Someone goes, "I'll just drink a glass of water." I don't really like that advice because I think that doesn't really help. But what I will say is that sometimes thirst can get mixed in with us feeling like we're really hungry as well. So it's always a good idea to make sure that you are just having lots of water, and having the water with the meal when you are having cravings as well. The final thing I want you to remember though is just don't panic. What I will say is that every time we have our periods, our body is burning more energy, like I said, like we're burning more energy at rest. Our metabolic rate is higher because our body is basically just working harder with everything that it's doing. So if you do have a few extra calories at this point, I'm talking like, if you go over by like 100 calories or something, during this time when you have your period, it's really not going to do much to affect your progress at all. And you can also use the rest of the week when you're not having really intense cravings to maybe slightly reduce and just balance it out. So if you do go over a bit, it's not going to really do much to affect your progress. You're better to do that and feel like you've satisfied the craving a little bit during this time of the month, rather than just like telling yourself you can't have it, being miserable and probably going to binge in a few days' time. So that's the main protocol for that. The one thing I want to say here as well is foods that really help with period cravings. So these support energy, mood, and satisfaction. So carbs, rice, potatoes, oats, pasta, fruit, and like I said, going for complex whole grain options as much as you can. Protein, you guys know what protein is, but like chicken, eggs, yogurt, tofu, protein shakes, whatever it might be, whatever diet you have, protein is good. Healthy fats, particularly dark chocolate, nuts, nut butter, they really help. And also salty foods do really help. But you can go for things like potatoes with a bit of salt on, crackers, popcorn as well. It's often what the body wants when we are going through this time as well. The goal is planned satisfaction. It's not about restricting. Again, it's not about not having the thing that you really want. It's just acknowledging it's there, knowing why it's there, and seeing if there's a smarter choice that you can make to satisfy the craving but keep you on track. If your calories do go slightly higher at this point, what I want you to understand is that in your luteal phase, so this is the second 2 weeks of your 4 week cycle. If a cycle is typically 28 days, on average it is. Obviously, there's variations. But in the luteal phase, when you're just about to get your period and you're having your premenstrual symptoms, your body often burns more calories at rest. Like I've said, your metabolism increases, appetite rises to match that demand. So if your calories are creeping up ever so slightly during this time, it's not fat gain. It will balance out over the week. Your progress isn't ruined. And the scales always read higher at this time of the month anyway, just because your body is holding on to water because of everything that's happening. But fat loss is about trends over long periods of time, and it's not about singular days. So if you do go over in one day, do not panic. All is not lost. You're going to be totally fine. One thing that I do want to remember when we're talking about cravings, though, is sleep. And this applies to all three. This applies to all of them. So sleep affects all types of cravings. It affects all of them. If your sleep is poor, your cravings get 10 times louder. That is because when you're sleep deprived, there are two main sleep hormones. I won't bore you and go into too much detail with the science, but basically you've got two main hormones when you're sleeping. It's ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin is your hunger hormone. Leptin is the hormone that makes you feel full. When we have very limited sleep or very, very poor quality sleep, these hormones and their levels change. So that's why when you are sleep deprived, you are 10 times hungrier, even if you're eating enough, and you crave quicker, less time consuming, more calorie dense, and rewarding, as we see it, foods. So sticking to your plan feels 10 times harder for this reason because of what's happening with your hormones due to lack of sleep. And emotional eating feels a lot harder to control. Period cravings feel much more intense as a result. So what you guys need to do is make sleep just a non-negotiable priority, not just for fat loss, but also just for your health as well. I know sometimes when someone's like, you need to get perfect sleep, you need to get great sleep, you need 9 hours of sleep a night. If you're someone that struggles with sleep, that creates pressure and it stresses you out when you're trying to go to sleep. I know that. It's just about as much as you can make your sleep a priority and see if there's just some little tweaks that you can make. So if at the moment you're getting like 5 hours, maybe we try and head to bed an hour early and see if we can get 6 hours consistently. Or maybe it's about limiting caffeine a little bit earlier in the day so that you can get better quality sleep, like little changes. I'm not expecting you to overhaul everything overnight. But when we're talking about cravings overall, we need to make sure that we are trying to get as good sleep as we can because this does have a massive impact on every single type of craving that you could possibly have. So that is everything I wanted to go through with you guys. Like I said, I've given you three kind of protocols on what to do and how to deal with these. But my final thoughts for you guys, cravings are very, very normal. Ignoring them doesn't work, restricting them harder does not work, but understanding them and working with them does work. So for general cravings, the first time we talked about, you want to pause, assess, try and balance it, and then break the habit. For more emotional cravings or emotional eating, you need to identify the emotion. You need to try and use non-food comforts if you're not hungry, and you need to just try and practice compassion with yourself and not guilt or shame. Period cravings, you need to predict them by tracking your cycle, preempt them as much as you can, try and choose some foods that are smart and are more aligned with your goals, and don't stress out if you go a bit over during this time. But the bottom line is that you guys are totally in control of your food and totally in control of your diet. If you're someone that maybe doesn't feel like that right now, if you're more at the start of your journey, or if you've never really felt that like that in your life, you've always felt like food's controlled you and not the other way around, there is a way to really overcome that and to cultivate a really healthy relationship with food. It's very, very possible. It just takes a bit of time and it takes a bit of patience and it takes going through these protocols, again and again until you kind of get the reps in and you build really a lot of confidence with that. You are in control. It's just about having an awareness and it's not about being totally perfect with it. So that is everything for this week, guys. If you are someone that maybe struggles with this at the moment, there's absolutely no shame in that. But definitely, if you haven't before, I've talked to loads of you guys about this, loads and loads and loads. But if you haven't chatted to us about it before and you think maybe you need some help, message Adam or message me, and we can help you with that. But this is what you need to do, and you need to start putting these protocols into practice as much as you can and having patience with it. So I hope this was helpful. I'm going to bring that to an end and let you guys all go and enjoy your evenings. I hope you guys have a great one, and I will catch up with you on the next one next week.